Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session on Introduction to .NET Aspire. Today we have George Artiero, who is a senior cloud advocate at Microsoft and a Microsoft MVP, and who is going to take us through this session on .NET. And he's going to help us how you can get started and what are the few demos on how you can do more actions on .NET Aspire. So before we get started, I just want to mention that the session is recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. And secondly, there is a certificate of participation at the end of the session. So make sure you climb that at the end. Thank you again for joining everybody, and all stages all to George to get started. Over to you. George, you're on mute.
Thank you, Suraj, for the invite, and it's my pleasure. Like you said, I'm a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. And if you want to follow me on Twitter or on X or LinkedIn, probably will be easier. The same Jorge Artiro. And I have this channel on YouTube called Ajata. There's a lot of content there that you can also share with your friends. And we're going to talk today about .NET Aspire and a bit more like a lot of development centric talk. But if you are more like a cloud person, it's fine. There are content for you. You have to understand how you're going to deploy those applications later on your environment. And let's get started. Let's see what's .NET Aspire, what's people talking about .NET Aspire, and why someone like me that talk about Docker, containers, Kubernetes, wants to talk about .NET Aspire. And first thing, if you want to follow that, you can go on the Let's Learn.net, and we're going to follow these GitHub.net presentations, Let's Learn.net Aspire. If you can clone this repository, you're going to see the demo that we're going to show today. And there is a called workshop repository. And we presented that. You can find that on the .NET YouTube. But here you can ask your questions. I'm going to try to show my view of .NET Aspire, someone that is also like a Docker captain like myself, how we see .NET Aspire for someone already working with containers with Docker and developing around like containers. And the first thing, if you're not really full .NET developer yet, .NET is a full language, means that you think .NET's too old. It's not true. .NET is a very young language because there's always a new update in .NET 8 now. .NET 9 is coming in November. We have a language that can do anything, pretty much from cloud, web, desktop, mobile, gaming, IoT, and AI. Means it's a very flexible language. You can run things in container now with 10, 15 megabytes. It can run one .NET application inside a Docker container. Very lightweight. All the tooling on there have Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code. I'm going to show both here. And you have the IDEs and the integration and the operating systems as well. Means that what's .NET Aspire? Why we create something different? We create kind of let's call like a layer of a framework or for a group of features on .NET to allow those things. We believe that all the apps, they need observability, they need logs, metrics. We need to see this. We need resilience, scalability, and manageability. So we're going to see each one of those things, how we solving those problems for you to get started with your development. If you're using microservice, APIs, whatever you're using, it's going to be easier for the developers now to develop with .NET, following all those 4 pillars. And keep in mind that .NET Aspire is for developers. It's not only for production. You can do some things in production, but it's to solve, the development life cycle in your local environment, and you're going to understand that. Then .NET 8 includes all those functionalities. Okay, independent of .NET Aspire, forget about .NET Aspire. .NET 8 itself brings those features. Some of those features are there for a while, but .NET 8 comes with all these things. Means that for observability, we have all these building metrics, and and for resilience, we also have options, and and scalability. You have ahead of time compilation that brings your application to a very small thing without much dependence, then can run anywhere and can be very fast to scale up and down. We have these smaller versions of .NET, or even ahead of time compilations, where it's very fast for performance and for scalability. Then can run inside a container, can be very scalable, up and down. And we have all these things for now management, with Castro rotating certificates for SSL, TLS, and we have those functionality on .NET already. Okay, and we're going to see that for observability, we have OpenTelemetry already there. And so we think that's still not easy. We have all those things, but still very hard for the developers to get started. And if you're a manager, how can I get my team, on board? It's very hard. And then we try to simplify that. We're trying to, get that complexity and simplify how you get started. Have a path and choice for you to get started. That's what we bring with .NET Aspire. So .NET Aspire is this group of features that you're going to see, and to fix those observability and be something that will be production ready, and be helping you with your distributed applications. Like if you have microservice, a bunch of APIs, it's very hard to manage the deployment of those things, and even the development lifecycle as well. So .NET Aspire brings, let's see what that means, and who is going to use that, and if you should be using that or not. For you to understand, imagine it like application, like a web application, where you just want to, like say a Blazor application, like a front-end application, where you want to have access to your data source, and your data source should be like a Postgres database, and you have this API. You have a backend API, your front-end just call this API, and you can have, a bunch of microservice, identity catalog, order, basket, payment, and what you normally need. You have this complexity here now. When you're going to develop this application, you need to split all those microservices. You have mobile and browser now. You have this database, then you bring like Redis caching for, to manage the caching. And now because you have microservice architecture, you need this event bus, like a message queue, Rabbit message queue there, that's going to do that async communication between those microservices. And that's become very complex. You could have OpenAI for AI now, and these become complex. You have webhook clients, SignalR or something else, and you have to manage your observability as well. And that become very complex. So .NET Aspire, works with all scale of application and grows with you. Like once you're going to grow your application, .NET Aspire will be able to grow that. Means that if you are not using all that complexity, but in some stage you're going to need those components, .NET Aspire is going to help you to grow along the way. And so .NET Aspire is this, cloud-ready stack. It's a stack. It means that it's a group of components of functionalities that it can leverage. You don't have to use all of them to make your life easier and very focused on the developers. The first thing we're going to see is the smart defaults. Okay, smart defaults. How we give you like out of the box configurations that can do most of those things for you. Can do all the configuration, all the defaults out of the box for you. And then you're going to see how you're going to see the metrics on that developer dashboard, orchestration, how you're going to bootstrap, all those components, Cache, database, front end, back end, and have your development environment working. And how we fix service discovery without removing, the port numbers that is a very annoying thing that each developer has a different port number for like the API, for the microservice, and become very hard to find which port each one of those servers are running. Then you get the code from GitHub and suddenly the port on your local environment is different and you have to fix yourself. Service discovery is going to fix this problem. They're going to know where each one of those microservices are running, and they're going to set the port dynamically for you, and you don't have to care about that anymore. And components is what we call those extra services like Cache, Rabbit Message Queue, database. There's a bunch of components that's growing every single day that you can just now include in your application, in your solution, without having to understand the whole thing. And you can have your full environment like I showed on the diagram before. And the last piece is deployment. That's pretty much how I get all these things and I deploy on Azure, how I deploy on Kubernetes, how I deploy on container apps, and so on. Can I create a Docker Compose file of these of these components and run as a Docker Compose? There's options for that as well. Let's see how far we can get. Today is more like an introduction. Keep in mind that there's a lot of documentation. If you clone this repository, you can follow yourself, the workshop there that's going to give you step by step how to get started. Let's say if you have a .NET application and you want to now start using Aspire, features, you can just follow those steps and learn how to do step by step. So smart defaults, how we fix these. We bring the observability, resilience, health checks as well. The probes that we need to know if the application is ready, if the API is ready, and how we bring open telemetry for observability. And then we need to do those configurations. You can see here the configuration for observability. We need that single configuration that's going to add open telemetry for your logging. And we're going to do that on the service default for you, okay? Another one is like you have options if you want to also send this to Azure, like App Insights or any other external, endpoint that supports open telemetry. That's now this standard that everyone's using for observability. Means that many of those features, including Azure App Insights, supports open telemetry. You just have to get all your telemetry from .NET from your application and send for those endpoints. But we're going to also have like a developer dashboard where you can see all that telemetry yourself locally without having to managing like a software to get all that information like App Insights. You can do that locally now as well with .NET Aspire. And resilience, you can add that, and that's done like the resilience will be, pretty much you're going to retry every call. Like say if I call like a backend and that's not available, they're going to keep retrying, and there are some configurations that you can do that. But we're going to add these out of the box for you, and also the health checks where you can extend, you can tell if your application is healthy, is live, and very simple to do it. We do the basic configuration for you, and you can extend that. Then let me stop here for a while. Then let me get my browser here. If you're going to follow that on yourself on GitHub, that's just my clone, .NET presentations, let's learn .NET Aspire. And you're going to find this workshop here, okay? You can find explaining each one of those components, like I was showing you, orchestration, discovery, components, dashboard, and so on. And you can even have translations. If you're watching these, you want to see another language, and help yourself. There are a few languages here supported already. If you're not doing your language, is not there yet, you can also help us to create your language here. But the workshop itself, the first thing you have to do is you have to make sure that you have everything that you need to work with .NET Aspire. And in this case, I'm going to use Visual Studio, but you can use Visual Studio Code as well. And I have Visual Studio latest version here. By the way, if you have a free version, there is a Visual Studio Developer edition where, let me just open here. You can download yourself. Community edition, you can download. There are free versions if you want to use Visual Studio. And another thing I have is Docker Desktop or Docman or Podman. I prefer Docker Desktop. I have Docker Desktop installed here. And another component would be .NET Aspire workload. How I know if I have .NET Aspire workload? You just go on your let's go here, .NET workload list. You're going to see if you have this, and I have .NET Aspire available here. If you don't have it, they have instruction how you can install .NET, the workload Aspire, or you can just update. You can then pretty much you can use Visual Studio Code with DevKit as well. Yeah, if you want, you can also have Visual Studio Code like I do have here, and then you should be also good to go. The same code will be here. Then after you do that configuration, that's the 74. That was my first demo today. The 74, the way that we do is we're going to add like a new project. There's a new project tab called .NET Aspire 74 that you can add to your solution. And if you use VS Code or Visual Studio, you can add this new project, .NET Aspire 74. And you can also do that from the command line if you want, okay? But it means that you can do that to Visual Studio Code, you can do from the command line, and you can add these 74s. And if I go for my Visual Studio here, what I did, I opened these let me show you here first. I have my solution open here, the one that I cloned, and they have like a front end and a back end. And what I can do is I can add a new project, and I'm going to search for Aspire, and I have .NET Aspire 74. That's how you add the project. And you can just say 74, .NET 8. Once you do that, you just create that extension method that is going to be used by the whole application. And that's going to do the configuration that we just discussed, the OpenTelemetry, health checks, the service discovery. That will be very important to inject the port numbers of, like the API. And yeah, pretty much the OpenTelemetry I was discussing, how we do instrumentation, if you want to use, App Insights. All those configurations, the health checks, will be done for you. So if you follow the configuration here, you're going to see that they're going to recommend you to, inside your both projects here, you go API and hub, you have to add this information here inside your program CS. And the first thing normally you do, you have to add, the dependency. You can drag and drop here. This service default, you can add dependence for this one. I can add dependence for that one as well. Means that both projects now have service default. I'm using service default. Once I do that, I can go on program CS, and they clear here after the var app, immediately after the var app, sorry, the web application create builder. Web application create builder, you can just add the add service defaults. That I'm adding the service default now for the hub project, and I'm also going to add these for the API. Now, with a single line of code, I'm adding, and adding the dependence. I now have service defaults for observability, telemetry, resilience, everything that we discussed before on those front end and back end. That's simple like that. It's a single line of code. And if you want to map the endpoints, you have to put these after the builder builds. You're going to add here as well in both of those projects. With those simple things, you can now go on the configuration and set, the startup to startup both. Then I have to go on the startup, and I want to now make sure that, where's that? Multiple projects, I want to start both of them. And if I go start, let's see if that works. The demo gods. I'm not looking at the questions. If there are any questions, you can open the microphone, or someone just can read. Suragi can read the questions if you have there. There you go. That's the web application. And the main thing now is, without resilience, if I click here in the API, it's a weather service, okay? Every time that I click here, I'm calling external US National Weather Service API. If that API is not available, the thing should be failing here, okay? And how do I know that's failing? I can look the logs. I have the logs here. And that's how it become complex. I have a log for the front end, and I have a log for the API. Then every time that I kind of click here, let's click it multiple times, I get the response and the weather for each one of those places. Okay. And then I can also, filter here. But what we did on this demo application, we injected like a failure. Every 5 times that you click, if I'm not wrong, we injecting like a failure just for you to test. And then if you go back to your logs now, you're going to see what's going on here. And there is a warning here. They try again. Exception, they retry. That's already part of the defaults that .NET create for you now. And you don't have to care now about, checking exception if there is a 500 like happened here. The application didn't fail. Why didn't fail? Because we retried. That was all done for you, with .NET Aspire that it didn't have before. But now I have a problem. We have all these logs across. Imagine if we have like 5 microservices, and we have all these logging, page. Like each one will be like a command line like that with the logins. How can I centralize that in one place, and it'll be easier for me to see these logs? You're going to see that's a spoiler for what's coming with the dashboard, okay? And then we can stop here. Let's stop that. So that's it. With a single thing, we just created resilience of visibility, health checks, everything for you here for your application. And what's next? What's next? We did service default. What's next here? If I go back to my .NET Aspire, let's see what we call developer dashboard. Remember those logs? We want to see those logs now in a nice way, in a dashboard, in a web application, just for me, for the developer to find the problems, because sometimes there are bugs there and we don't know how to find each one of those bugs in an easy way. And then the dashboard creates these, structured logs, metrics, and distribute traces, dependence as well. And you're going to see for each one of those components of what we call, resource, all the tracing of the calls. If they call the API, calling the external API, like you see the weather external API, everything will be there. And very easy to see the logs as well and see the tracing. If that sounds good, let me extend here. I can show that probably running for you very soon. You can get the same dashboard that I just showed there, running as a standalone, or you're going to see what you're going to do next. You're going to create this new project on your solution called .NET Aspire App Host. That's going to able now to bootstrap, to start up your application, not bootstrap, like more start up your application, similar to what like a Docker Compose does, that they look all the components and they're going to start in order, checking dependence, means they're going to start the API first, then the front end, and everything will be working like database, caching. And you can also run this developer dashboard as a standalone Docker container if you want, and just send, your open telemetry information to that. And you can also use the dashboard. But let's try to use with, .NET Aspire App Host, because the App Host is going to also start up on the browser the dashboard for you to use in your development. Okay, and that's what we call the app host is what you call orchestration, because it's orchestrating the startup like a Docker Compose does. Okay, and the nice thing is that before to do something like that, we have to do like this. We have to do multiple startup projects, or in VS Code you can do the configuration. But now with .NET Aspire, the orchestration will be done using .NET itself. Then it'll be C# code where you can define, very similar to what's a Docker Compose, but more powerful for .NET. Specifically for .NET, it'll be more powerful. And you're going to add your projects, and now they know exactly how they can start up your application. And once you do that, you're going to have this dashboard like I was showing with all those resources that we had in your app host. So let's see that working. If I go for the dashboard, that's the second step, the third item of the workshop. They ask you to create a new project, add a new project called .NET Aspire App Host. So we go back for Visual Studio for our solution, and you can add again a new project. Let's search here for Aspire, and it'll be App Host. Let's call this App Host. HTTPS .NET 8. So this app host now will be our startup project. We're going to start up here with the app host. You can do it here, or you can just set as a startup project here as well. And once you add this project, what they're going to ask you to do it, okay? You can do also from the command line. But now you have to create your components. And for us, we have our API and you have the weather hub. And you can copy this code. And those are the only two things we needed, because on the app host, there is a program CS. Okay. Then they ask you to go on the product CS after they create a builder, after they create builder, and they're going to add this. Okay, that's the only thing you have to do it. And why is failing here? Because I have to now tell my app host to include those dependents. Then I have to get my hub, drag and drop here for dependents, the same for the API, drag and drop for dependents. And now I have two projects, API and hub. Then my app host now is aware of those other two projects. And if I go back for the app host program CS, they now understand both projects, okay, API and my weather hub. And going back for the GitHub workshop, you can see that you have just to run the app host project. In Visual Studio Code, you have to do this launch JSON file to just, launch one single project now. You don't have to set up multiple startup projects anymore. And you can run, the debug thing. Let's do that. And using debug, app host, and I run that. What's going to happen now? I'm going to create just like a single command line called app host, where they're going to start all our components, the front end, the back end, and also the dashboard for the Aspire. Now we have the Aspire dashboard with the API and the weather. And we open our application now from here. We even have Swagger for the API. You can test this Swagger file for the API. You can get the API endpoint here. The other one is the front end. So let me open the front end HTTPS. And you have the same thing again. Let's create a few ones to get the weather time. Some ones take a while, maybe. We don't have weather for this one specifically. He tried, even he tried multiple times, didn't work. Let's go back for this one, probably have more likely to. And you can see that the same thing happened. You don't have the logs here anymore. And where are the logs? The logs are now on your dashboard. You already see the states that are running. There are some logs and like even failure, because something failed there. As we did that exactly to show the failure. And how that works, you can now view the logs for each one. Let's view the logs for the API itself. You can see the same thing, fail, he try. You can look the logs the same way that you looked before, but now inside the web application. Or you can see the detail of the API. Let's go. Nice thing here, we have the APIs, endpoints, and everything. But what people like to see is the tracing or the structure log. Now you can see, something failed here. I can go on the tracing or even the warning or something. Let's say the API, let's get that information here. You're going to see the external API, weather.gov, being called. And another thing I want to show is that if you click on the same one again, let's say this one, click on the same one multiple times, they're not hitting the server because they are using Redis. We don't have Redis cache here. It means that every time that I click, there is no caching. I'm always calling the APIs, okay? Then if I go for structure logs, there you go. That's the last call I did. And let's go tracing. Yeah, this one here, probably be easier. We always calling 300 milliseconds or something like that, microseconds. This is using local cache, okay? That's using local caching. Means that it's not taking long time. You can see milliseconds here. You can see things getting faster because the caching that we injected there. Okay. Another one is let's go here, metrics. I like the metrics a lot. Why? Because you can see things on the .NET itself. You can see .NET, how many requests you're getting for the API. So requests per second, the duration of each one of those requests, how long it's taking. Then you can figure out if something's taking longer and why. You can see the connections on the web server on the cache through. I love the .NET assemblies, how many assemblies they're loading. And another one is HTTP requests. How many HTTP requests you have for your API. So there's a lot of information on this, and that's what we call dashboard. If you like it, write down there on when, or if this video is already published on YouTube, leave a comment, leave a like on the video for people to know that we enjoy, because we never had that before. That's just amazing for you to see each one of those components on this way. But let's stop everything. Let's stop. Let's go back to the workshop. I'm trying to do as fast as I can. We don't have much time. You can also watch other videos. Maybe people explain a little bit slower, but we're going to try to do as much as we can today here. And so that's pretty much the dashboard. But it's still one thing here. I mean, every time that I do development, my API, if I go on the app set configurations or on the, what's that, properties, launch settings, yeah, you have HTTPS, you have these endpoints here. And that could be different for each one of the developers on the team, those port numbers. Then we want to make sure that service discovery is being used for us. And let's have a look how to fix that. Let's go here and understand. So we have all these, those configurations, and to address the issue, what they ask us to do, they allow the front end, the Weather Hub, to discover the API at runtime. That's the main thing that we're going to do here. How can we discover where the API is running, which port number they're running at runtime? At runtime means when the application is going to start up, we're going to figure out where the API is. They're going to let the front end where the API is, and we're going to do that configuration using the service discovery feature. And we have to go on the app host project, and we have to tell now the orchestrator, that app host project, that the front end has a reference to the API. We're telling them now, look, my front end depends on the API. So we can now go back on the app host project, and we're going to say that, okay, we're going to now extend and tell them that there's a reference for the API. In doing that, they're going to try to inject, the API configuration, the endpoints on your front end. Then, but we also need to enable service discovery on the front end. Okay, we did on the app host, that's just the orchestrator, but we have to tell the front end to use service discovery, and how we do that. So That's the way that service discovery being introduced on ESP.NET. That's you can just tell the HTTP client to use HTTPS or HTTP, and you give a name. You're going to give a name for your API, for your microservice, that there is no port number anymore. And how you do that on our project? On our project, you have to go on the hub, on the app settings JSON, and you have to update the weather endpoint configuration. Let's go there. Weather hub app settings, weather hub. Let's close that. Then that's exactly say app settings.json, app settings.json file. We have to now update the configuration to use this thing here, this API. Then we're now going to use this let's say endpoint here with the port number. We're going to use a new way, using service discovery, and the API is going to be called API, only API. That's the name that we give on the app host project. Remember the app host here? We call API. That's the name that we're going to use on your configuration, on the app settings here, API. Has to be exactly the same name. So the weather endpoint now is using the API, and we can update the configuration on the client as well, optionally, if you want. If you don't want to do this way here on the app settings, you can also do on the code. That's two ways that you can do it. Let's try like that. That should be enough. I'm doing on the app settings, but you could do on code as well if you want. Then I keep app hosts and I start again. And in the meantime, what they expecting us to see? They're expecting us to see now the injected. They're going to see the injected port numbers on your weather hub configuration. Okay, and let's go on your weather hub details, and if you scroll down and you view the port here, they creating those configuration for us. Means that we don't have to care about the port number anymore. They tell in the front end where the API is and which port number is. That's very handy. If you are .NET developer, you always have this issue because the codes on GitHub use a different port, and ours we have to change and fix that manually yourself. And now you don't have to care about that. With that single configuration, we fix this problem. So everything's running again. That's service discovery. Okay, means that with that single configuration on the code, we're just telling here you can do in code as well, and giving the reference on the app host, they're going to inject that for us. That's done. That's service discovery. What's next? What's .NET Aspire bring more to fix our development problems for cloud native, for distributed applications. Next one is what we call components. Okay, I'm probably going to follow here. Let me just go back quickly for my demo. So we look at service discovery. Okay, we did that configuration for you. You can do that on code. You can do on your configuration. And that's it. That's the only thing we did change to get service discovery enabled. And they injected the configuration like I did show for you live. Okay. I already did show that. The next one, components. Components are very important. And on this workshop, what we do, we we're going to use Red's cache for your caching. Means what they caching? They caching the response from the API, because the weather doesn't change every second. Means that we can cache that. We caching, I don't know for how long. Um, I think it's 5 minutes. We caching for some time. Means that if you look the weather for the same place multiple times, they're not going to call the external API. They have these in cache. And was done in memory. Now we're going to replace that for a Red's cache. That's very fast. It's in memory cache as well. But components, you have a bunch of other components. Like I said, we're going to use Red's cache, but think about components like a piece of your solution, your database, your message queue, you know, even service on Azure, on clouds as well. Then go and how are you going to do that? On the .NET Aspire app host, that's the orchestrator, we're now going to include the Red's cache. In this example here on the slide deck on my PowerPoint, we're going to show how you can do like Postgres database as well. We're going to do only for the Red's cache, okay? And notice that once I add those new components, I want to tell my API that I'm depending on the database. I want to tell my front end, my web front end, that I'm depending on the cache. Those with reference is going to help me to even get the discovery as well of the ports of those servers. I don't have to know which port the Red's cache is running on that database. They're also going to use service discovery for that. And another thing is they're going to use Docker. Now, remember the Docker desktop I was showing? For those components like Postgres and Redis, they're going to use your Docker. That's why Docker desktop has to be running, or Podman, but I'm using Docker desktop. And then they're going to pull the Docker image and run those components as a container, as a Docker container. You're going to see that. And the only thing you have to do in your project, you have to use those cache. Now we're going to do that for caching, for Red's cache. You now have to tell that I want to use Red's output cache. Now replacing the default cache, and then we're going to do that in your front-end application. And it means that the output cache now will be using Red's cache. Then, yeah, those service defaults that we did before, you'll be doing all the retries, all the logging, checking, and open telemetry, and the caching will be using Red's cache. So let's go back to the to the components. What we need to do, we have to go on the app host project, and we want to now add Red's cache. Okay, we go for the app host program, this one, and let's put Red's cache here. Then what's going to happen? I don't have Red's cache. Why? Because I need the way that they develop, each one of those components is a NuGet package. Then they're going to tell you to include this. Let me this one here. To add the Red's components, you need to install this NuGet package here. ASP.NET Hosting Reds. Then you need to go on, in this case is the hosting, you have to go on the app host, add .NET Aspire package. Then they're going to show only the .NET Aspire and get app hosting Reds and install. That's the package for Red's cache hosting part. means that now they know how to start up a Reds container inside your .NET solution. And they're going to download the package. I think it is done. Let me go back here. There we go. And now you have Reds cache working here because the .NET package was, NuGet package was installed. And then you also need to put the reference. Remember the API, you need to now tell the API that we want to use the cache. The cache should be on the API layer. And then let's go back to my API. And now we're going to add the reference for the cache. Remember that we're going to use this variable name. Another part is you could add the Reds commander if you want. I'm not going to do that. And then you have all these web application that's kind of a control plane for Reds cache. It's a nice to have as well. And that's just run your application. And sorry, let me just yeah. Before I run, because I don't want to do that twice, I want to integrate my cache on the API. So I just have to go to go my API program CS file and API program CS file. After here, I can, after the service defaults, I have to add the heads cache. But now I have the same problem. I need to add this new .NET Aspire package, .NuGet package. And how I do it, I go on the API, .NET Aspire package, and have a look at the name. Stack Exchange Reds Output Caching. Stack Exchange Reds Output Caching. That's the one that I have to install. You can see the downloading here of the package. Apply, accepted, get all the dependencies. And then yeah, you have to make sure that the output caching is working. You have to go on the where the service manages CS, then data manage CS, and you have to delete this code here, okay? Because we're using different cache option here. You're going to delete that option. So we're going to go that output caching. Where is that? There you go. You can just comment these out. That's the default caching. And run the application. Okay, let's run again. Why? Because when we did that configuration here, Red output cache, they need all the configuration for us. We had just removed the default one that was there before. And look that, if I go for Docker, you can see that the container is starting here. And now we should have this Reds cache running here. That's the Docker container running on Docker desktop with your Reds cache running. And You can see the port number here. I haven't had to tell my API the port number, how they know it. If I go on my API, you should have these there somewhere. They kind of informing these targets, endpoints, means that now I have all these three components without having to understand how Cache works. I have Cache running on my Docker. And now if I open my front end, let's open my front end again, and let's play a little bit. Let's play. Let's say place here. This one. Look, the second time I click faster. Okay. This one takes a while. But if I click again, it's faster. Why? Exactly because if I go on the tracing, you can see the difference in performance. Let me go 11. The hook. Let's go for the API. There you go. One call is using Cache now. The caching layer is being used, and that's very fast. If I go, the first call, 79 milliseconds, they call it the external API, took 37 milliseconds, but they caching that after the call. That means that anyone that calls now, they're going to have cache because I did use the cache. And you can see all the tracing here. We never had that as easy like that, without minimal configuration. We had to do that everything yourself, and you can see the difference using. That's caching with .NET Aspire and using Docker Desktop. And the last thing I want to show is the deployment. Like, I'm not going to go for the full deployment. You can use this command line on Azure called Azure Developer, AZD. Is a new command line that you have, like AZD. You can see that you can run all those commands and to deploy applications on Azure. And Visual Studio Code now come with these. If I go up, I think that host publish. Publish. If I go on the app host project, the orchestrator, and I say publish, they're going to give you an option to deploy on Azure Container Apps. And it's very simple. The same thing that what's going to happen here is the same that they're showing. Target, you're just going to deploy, everything for you on Azure Container Apps from Visual Studio. And you can do that from the command line if you want. If you don't have Visual Studio, but you can have Visual Studio Community for free, you can do from the command line and also deploy on Azure Container Apps from here. I don't really, use Azure Container Apps. I want to just deploy someone else. You can go for this project. It's called Aspirate. Okay, was created here. You can install Aspirate. An easy way to install, and they can create. I even have on the .NET documentation here deployments, .NET Aspire deployments. You can use Aspirate to initialize the project and also to generate like Kubernetes manifest files or even Docker Compose files. Okay, if you want to deploy on Kubernetes, from your app host orchestrator, you can use this project Aspirate. Okay, on the page that I did show here, they explain you how to install and how to run all the commands that you want here. So that's pretty much. We're not going to extend. That's in a nutshell what .NET Aspire is. Just Let me just finalize here with there are things like, I'm not using my front end is not .NET. That's fine. You can have any, JavaScript framework you can use and you can add on your app host. It'll be something like that, npm app. You can do a Python as well. Then it's not just for .NET. You can use .NET Aspire for other language, even for if you have a Docker file that you want to run. There are options with Dockerfile as well that you can integrate to Docker, on .NET Aspire. I mean, you're going to run .NET just for that host, but your components could be JavaScript, could be Python, could be anything that you want. Okay. Just we did that last month called .NET Aspire Developers Day. You can find the link there and you can find the recorded from last month. And more resource and my contact again, Jorge Arteiro on X, on LinkedIn. Follow me on Azure YouTube channel and all those amazing .NET resource. You can get the videos there. That's pretty much what I have today. Thank you so much for attending. I hope to see everyone next time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer as well. Let's have a look here on the questions. Yeah, I don't think I have any specific question yet, but if not, send me a question, put on the YouTube video there, your question, and I'm more than happy to help anyone in the future as well.
Thank you, George, for the session. I think there was a question on PPT. Somebody wants to try it along whatever you have did. So they wants to have the PPT. Is that fine?
Say again, what they want to add?
PPT for the presentation, if I'm.
Okay. The PPT, good question. The PPT is on the GitHub. You can download from there. On the GitHub that I was showing there, you can download from there. Can you put the let me give you the link here in a second. 1 second, I give you. Yeah, that's the PPT. You can download from the. Yeah, there you go. There you can download just on GitHub. Just download as raw file, and then that's a PPT file. And
Gotcha.
follow the workshop instruction if you want to do yourself. And also you can present that for your community, get that PPT, give a go on the workshop yourself and present for your community using VS Code or Visual Studio Community Edition if you don't have it. And let me know if you present for your community, let me know. I'm happy to promote as well.
Okay, I think there's no more questions regarding the presentation. Okay.
That's okay.
Okay. Thank you again, Joy, for
Thank you,
joining
Shrek,
us,
again.
taking the
Thank you,
time.
everyone.
Yeah, thank you everyone for
Thank
joining
you.
as well. Thank you.
Yeah, my
Bye.
LinkedIn is there. Please connect with me. See you next time.
See you next time. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I've also shared the certificate link just in case